And you have to focus on what is true. And you will see a world of difference in your life. Second, the preview question then is, when you're watching or listening to something, you ask, is this true or false? Is this true or false? I'm going to spend the most time on this because all the others flow out of this. Here's an illustration. You think that your emotions are responding to reality. No. Your emotions are responding to your thinking, and your thinking is the perception of reality. Those people who listen to just 5 minutes of negative things, their perception was, the guy in that car, he probably wants to hurt me. Never pick up a hitchhiker because, I heard that story. It's their perception. So pretend you're out maybe on Quicksilver Trail or you're taking a big hike, and as you're walking up, you freeze, it's coiled up, it's a snake, and you got within, and all of a sudden, your stomach tightens up, perspiration, heart rate, oh my gosh, it's a snake, and you hold someone back, and you look at it, and you look at it, and you look at it, and then it's not moving at all, and so you get closer, and you get closer, you get closer, and you realize it's a piece of rope that's coiled around. It was your perception that created all the exact same emotions as though it were a snake. And there's a lot of snake thinking. It takes an incredible amount of discipline and diligence to be someone who starts to think about what's true. Second, is it honorable? The word means sober, serious, worthy of respect, inspires awe. It refers to those things that reflect the weighty purpose of a believer's life. Now, there's a time for fantasy football. There's a time to get jacked up over the Super Bowl and other things. There's a time, I suppose, to figure out who won the Globe or the Oscar. There's a time for the trivia. There's probably a time just to relax and watch part of Entertainment Tonight. But there's trivia ad nauseum in the world. And this is saying, in the midst of all that, here's what you need to think about. You need to think at times about some things that are grave, sober, serious. Things like, the living God, through his Son Jesus Christ, has rescued you from eternal damnation by his gift on the cross. And he loves you and favors you with unconditional love and draws you close to himself and has an amazing plan for your life. Whew. He has an Ephesians 2:10 purpose for you, that you are his actual workmanship. You're his piece of pottery, his poem. You are made and designed by the living God for a purpose that only you can fulfill, that he did before the foundations of the earth. Question, am I fulfilling it? You are living in a world that's called window, time, but you're made for eternity. There is a heaven that is real. There is a hell that is real. Those are serious things. We've had 10 or 11 memorial services in the last 30 days, and I can tell you, when you go to a memorial service and it's someone you know and you love, you get some of these thoughts. What in the world am I doing with my life? Does it matter? The writer of Ecclesiastes says there's far more wisdom at a funeral than there is at a party. Now, I don't mean you focus on this all the time, but we're living in a world that's quick, fast, immediate. Those deep kind of thoughts shape your thinking. My wife asked me after last night's message, she said, so Chip, what are you afraid of? I said, I am most afraid that I will squander the life that God has given me and I will not fulfill his purposes. And she said, why? I said, because at least in the world standard, I'm way more, quote, successful than I thought I'd ever be. God has given us more than I ever dreamed in every arena. And all that creates comfort and a lifestyle that works against the kind of focus and sacrifice of taking up my cross and following him and taking big risks for the kingdom of God. And so I am afraid that I could slip into a status quo type life and everyone would think it's just wonderful, except the Lord would know and I would know. Ask this question. Does this honor or dishonor God? When you're watching it, does this honor God? Does this really honor God? It might be gray, it might just be evil, that's easy, but does this show honor God? Does this conversation honor God? Does this movie honor God? Does the book I'm reading, does this relationship honor God? Third, is it right? The word means righteous. It's used in the New Testament to refer to the Father, to Jesus, to God's actions, to God's character. It pictures doing what is right when tempted. You might write the word integrity. At the heart of this is there is a standard that's not outside of God, but God's very character creates a standard. And integrity just means there is an alignment with that. And the question you want to ask, is this right or is it wrong? Did I just say the whole truth or a partial truth? Is this what's really clearly I know is true, or is it a white lie? Is it everyone does this on their taxes and that time is coming up, or is it absolutely pure? Is this I'm padding my expenses just a little because I can kind of justify it and I know and get away with it, or in fact is this integrity? We really love each other, but are we married or are we living together? Is this recreational, just sort of a spicy 49, 50, 51 shades of gray? Or is it just absolutely wrong and immoral and should never be in my house? Is it a game that honors life and love and warmth, or is it a game where people get blown up? And I put it in front of my kids where their thumbs are killing and mutilating thousands of people, hours on hours in addictive behavior. Just ask yourself. Questions. I actually took these 6 and I put them on one little card with these questions. Before I watch, listen, or think, is it true? Does it honor God? Is it right or wrong? And next, is it pure? This is from the same root word as holy, that means to be set apart, means to be free from defilement, sexual and moral purity in thought, word, and deed. And the question you want to ask is, will this cleanse or dirty my soul? Job would say in Job 31:1, I've made a covenant with my eyes. How then could I gaze lustfully for a virgin? David in Psalm 101, about verses 2 and 3, he says, I've committed before you, Lord, to live a blameless life, and I will set no worthless or vile thing before my eyes. Can I just say something, and we won't belabor it? If you have a porn addiction, just get help. All the research is that it is as addictive as cocaine. And trying hard and really intending and wanting to break a porn addiction is not something you'll probably do on your own. No one else has. And it produces fears, and it multiplies into lies and cover up. And it's no less addicting than if you were sticking a needle in your arm. And it's a pseudo-intimacy that will destroy your relationships. And so God's heart would be, I want you to see sex as holy and pure. The Bible says God made it. He loves it. But the marriage bed should be holy. He wants what you watch. Not just porn, but the kind of movies. And not just the sexually explicit ones, but what about the ones that they sort of suck us in by, you have this kind of mean guy married to this wonderful gal, and she falls in love with someone who's really not her husband, but he's a nice guy, and she's a nice guy, and he's a jerk, and we find ourselves rooting for them in their affair. And you know what that does? Tick-tock, 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 seed planted. The enemy's very shrewd. The battle for your life is not out there. The battle is right here. The weapons of our warfare are not fleshly, but divinely powerful. And we will take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. And that's why if you have a teenage son, in fact, in our day now, if you have a teenage daughter, you have to open the phones and have a conversation. And you need to do it in the next 24 or 48 hours. And sit down and talk about, your mind is so precious. And you are so precious. And the kind of addictions and the kind of information and the kind of attacks, no one would take their 12 or 13 or 11-year-old daughter or son or 10-year-old boy and drop them off, like in downtown San Jose in the middle of the night, or downtown Oakland, and go, hey, I'll catch you later, have fun. And yet when you don't have filters, when you don't have a conversation, when you haven't talked about these things, it's exactly what you're doing. And our kids are dying. Ask yourself, Will this cleanse or dirty my soul? And the next word is lovely. I like this one. Attractive, winsome, beautiful. It pictures things that call forth a response of love and warmth versus bitterness, criticism, and vengeance. This is a call to smell the roses, to look at a rainbow, to watch kids playing in a park, to ponder a pleasant memory, to pause with a warm embrace, to put your feet up and read an encouraging book. Yesterday, I'm very excited. I guess it was Friday. I got a chance. Those of you that haven't been around, I just had this horrendous back issue and I had surgery. And I played golf a couple times. So fun. And as I was driving, it was about 6:30 in the morning, and all these puffy clouds. And then it was all red and pink behind them. And I was just driving, and it was just like winsome, attractive, admirable. Oh, Lord. And I happened to my phone, you know how these phones work where they just play songs that are on your phone. You never know which is coming up. And out of the blue comes up a song from a 25-year-old young man who's best friends with my son. And he died of cancer at 25. And the song came on, Restore Me. And I thought back of those memories, and I thought back of what God has done. And it was I just began to ponder his kindness and his sovereignty and his love and beauty and creation. Guess what happened to my emotions? We live close to the ocean. When's the last time you went there? When's the last time you went to the redwoods? Get your faces out of the screens and look at the beauty that God has brought. Ask yourself this question. Will this renew or harden my heart? We're all different. I'm really sensitive. Super sensitive to information. But I wrote in the little VCC Weekly, I had come home and we were going to eat in about 10 minutes. And, I don't know what kind I had, but it was Channel 2. And I looked on Channel 2 and it was like, oh my gosh, someone was killed in Oakland. And then after that, there's like 12 or 13 kids abused and chained and starved. And I thought, man, I can't handle that. So I went to Channel 4 and, got to Channel 4. And it was like, oh my, this ugly racism things that happen. And then, oh my gosh, that was so negative. I thought, PBS, sometimes they'll give you a more documentary sort of position. All I wanted was to get a little update on the day, and they're showing an earthquake in another country and rescue workers and dogs and pulling bodies out of, in 10 minutes. I sat down to eat, and it was just like, ugh. I found myself disturbed within, sad, angry about the injustice in the world, a sense that the world is completely messed up. Here's the deal. In 10 minutes, everything bad that happened in the globe went on my screen and to me. And I'm telling you, there were hundreds of millions of acts of kindness and children born and people being generous and love given and people caring and kids adopted and food given and fresh water and people pulled out of the sex trade. And all that wonderfulness I didn't see, all I got in 10 minutes was that, and it shaped my thinking. And my emotions did exactly what they're supposed to do. So I don't watch the news. I don't. The names change, it's all the same stuff. Now, I got to stay up on things. I walk in each morning, get a cup of coffee. I read the highlights of the Wall Street Journal. I read the highlights of the San Jose, whatever it is. And if something really big happens, you get those feeds on your phone. I don't read them. Then everyone starts talking about something. I feel, this must be a big one. And I'll read it and find out what's going on. What you allow in your mind the last 30 to 45 minutes before you go to bed, and what you allow in your mind the first 30 minutes of your day will shape your subconscious, your mind, your thinking. You're either starving fear and feeding faith, or you're doing the opposite. Finally, he says that which is commendable, good report or repute. He says gracious, admirable is the meaning of the word. It literally means fair speaking. It describes things which are fit for God to hear versus ugly words, false words, and pure words. And the test here is, could I recommend this to someone who looks up to me? Right? Now, by the way, if you kind of are thinking, oh my gosh, this would radically change what comes in my house, good. It'll also change your fear, change your emotions, change your kids if you have them. But You don't have to raise your hands on this one. Have you ever been watching something and someone's coming down the hall and before they walk in, you change the channel? Oh, okay. I did that once. We've all been watching something and a little kid is coming in or your mate's coming in or something. And I don't mean that it's terrible, but I'm not comfortable with them watching this. How about this test? Imagine you're sitting on, one of those couches with 2 or 3 seats, and whatever's coming on your phone, your screen, your TV, the Lord Jesus in his resurrected body shows up and says, "Hey, Chip, how you doing?" "Great. I'm just going to relax a little bit and watch this." "Great. Mind if I sit down?" "No, I'd love to have you." Here's the question to ask. Are you comfortable with him sitting next to you watching what you're watching? Are you comfortable with a 5-year-old? With a grandchild? Are you comfortable with someone in this church or that you know that they just look up to you and you think, man, if they think I'm the best Christian, boy, oh boy, we're in trouble, but they do. Can you recommend it to them? And if you can't recommend it to them, it's not good for you. When I put things in my mind that separate me from my Father who paid the price and let the Son shed his blood for me, who so longs for my relationships and my purposes and my life to be filled with joy and goodness. When he sees that, the Father up above, he's looking down in love. He's not down on you. It is the shame that you feel that will keep you from acting. We have men's groups if you need help with pornography. We have women who are married to men who struggled with pornography. And for a lot of us, this is just a topic that in your small groups and with a close friend or two, you just need to say, I heard that message, and this is some areas I need to work on. Would you help me? Would you help me keep my commitments? He loves me, and I live a fearful life. The levels of depression in America are catastrophic. And much of it is because of what we think about. He finally summarizes and said, if there's any virtue or praise, in other words, in case I left anything out, it's sort of a think on anything that has the moral excellence and that will inspire and motivate you to love God and to love others. So everything doesn't have to be spiritual. I'm listening to a book called The Last Line. It's the life of Winston Churchill. It's fabulously interesting. So in my car, it's a book like this. That's why I put it on Audible. I said, I'll never read that. I've got like 6 hours in, and I looked the other day, there's only 31 hours left. But his courage and what was happening in the war. And I'm listening to another book by John Ortberg on the life you've always wanted. And at night before I go to bed, and it's just 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, I'm reading about the life of Martin Luther. And just all I want to do is, Lord, how do I fill my life and my mind with good things? Because I will be the product of my thought life. But it's just not thinking, it's then acting. Habitually practice these things. Habitually practice these things. He says, you've learned and received. You had an appetite and you applied. You heard and saw, I gave instruction and I modeled it. And here's why. Your thought life determines your, write the word, future. I don't know what your hopes are, but I'm going to tell you, your future will be determined by your thought life. The dreams, the passions, the joys, the thoughts, for friends, for family, for work. The scripture in Romans chapter 8, I put it in the Amplified because it's so graphic. Here's a great truth. Follow along. For those who are living according to the flesh, set their minds, notice the phrase, on the things of the flesh, which gratify the body. But those who are living according to the Spirit set their minds on the things of the Spirit, His will and His purpose. Now the mind on the flesh is death, both now and forever, because it pursues sin. But the mind of the Spirit is life and peace, the spiritual well-being that comes from walking with God, both now and forever. The mind of the flesh with its sinful pursuits is actively hostile to God. It doesn't submit itself to God's law since it cannot. And those who are in the flesh, living a life that caters to sinful appetites and impulses, notice, cannot please God. You can't keep putting things in your mind and then in your will, oh God, I want to do this. Transformation always begins with your thinking. Second, how? It's the principle of mind renewal. The principle of mind renewal. It's a verse we hear a lot around here, Romans chapter 12, too. And I like this, again, in the Amplified Bible. And do not be conformed to this world any longer with its superficial values and customs, but be transformed, and notice, not overnight, progressively changed as you mature spiritually by the renewing of your mind. Sometimes in some of these illustrations, they kind of get me because I'm getting older. I've been a Christian a little over 40 years. I didn't grow up as a Christian. I'm still doing the most basic things that I did years ago because I'm still struggling with everything that I'm talking to you about. But what I can tell you is, as I have done what I've talked about, the transformation that I've seen God in my life and those I love and those I've had the chance to help. So I have a little card. You can make your own. Before I watch, listen, or think on it, is it true? Does it honor God? Is it right or wrong? Will this cleanse or dirty my soul? Will this renew or harden my heart? Would I recommend this to someone who looks up to me? Will this bring peace or fear in my life? When I went through this stuff with my back, I had a time to really ponder some big issues and look at some pretty big holes that I felt God was speaking to me. And so there was a lie. I've always been, semi-ADD, A-type personality, all those things. It's why I love it here. I'm among friends. You're over the top. When I go to Korea, it's like, whoa, they're more like this than I am. I love it. I just hang out with them. It's just wonderful. And but here's a lie I believed most of my life. I'm a prisoner of the opinions of the important, influential people in my life. I agonize when my best judgment and direction from the Lord is different from theirs. Disagreeing with them will harm our relationship irreparably. So I attempt to please everyone, creating an unhealthy lifestyle. I mean, you could say it a lot easier, like people pleasing. But part of that is an alcoholic father and realizing, you got to keep the peace, and so you learn clues. And so that's on one side of a card, and it says lie, I believe. Then I flip the card over, and it says truths. Here's the truth. People love me and are for me and want me to live a life of joy, rhythm, rest, and fruitfulness in all areas of my life. I do not need to prove my worth through hard work or extraordinary productivity. I'm accepted, loved, and greatly valued just for who I am. But that lie pops up. So guess what I do? I read this side of the card, and then I say, stop. And then I turn it over, and I read this side of the card. And you know what I do? I'm setting my mind on the Spirit. What lies do you believe? What cards do you need to make? You would just be shocked at what God will do as you renew your mind. As you turn the page, here's the promise. The God of peace, the God of shalom will be with you. It's not just you're going to receive his peace, but his blessing, his power, his presence, his provision. He wants to fulfill the desires of your heart. Are you ready for this? Here's the biggest lie you believe. You don't think God is for you. You think you got to measure up. He is so outlandishly for you. In the New Living Bible, Psalm 86, about verse 5 says, oh Lord, you are so good, so ready to forgive, so abounding in unfailing love to all who ask for your help. And I bet I've read that hundreds of times in the last probably 90 days, because I read that and I just getting it from here to here for me, as I just have this predisposition, and I know where it came from, is that God's arms are probably kind of a little bit crossed, and now and then his toes tapping, and no matter what I do, well, Chip, that wasn't quite good enough. Here's what you need to do. And that's a lie. And I'm changing. And you can change. And your kids need to change. But you will have to guard your mind like never before. Remember, we started, I asked you a question. Do you want to overcome your fear? Do you? I mean, for real, I want you to go back to, this is what I was afraid of. Do you want to overcome your fear? If you do, then you have to radically change. These things don't come into my house, they don't come into my mind, they don't come on my screen, they don't come on my phone, and they don't come into my kids' or grandkids' lives. This truth is going to start into my mind. I've given you a game plan, 21 minutes of how to spend time with God. That's a good start. It's written out for you. I'm so excited that as you take these steps, God will show up in your life like never before. Now, here's the deal. Your emotions aren't going to change overnight. But if you do what we're talking about, I mean, a week you'll go, a little different. A couple, 3 weeks, whoa, a little different. About 30 days, it'll be like, wow. 90 days, people will say, what happened to you? 6 months, 2 years? Those addictions, those anger issues, those I've got to measure up, those things can really change.